It is rich in vegetable species. And Hemingway's flat B. The main room of the house was the place to receive all the famous personalities that visited Hemingway, which were not few. The house also has a library with more than 9,000 books, a dining room, and a study, which Hemingway never used as such, all decorated with hunting trophies. In 1947, Mary Welch, his fourth wife, had the idea of building a three-floor tower in the back of the house. The first one was the home for dozens of cats that lived in the property, and it's now a gallery. The second floor was used to store traveling and fishing items, and nowadays showcase Hemingway's passion for fishing. And the third floor was thought by Mary as a study for her husband's writing, but he never used it as such. Everyone had to be quiet in Finca Mejia in the mornings because that is when he liked to do his writing. There he would put words directly on his writing machine, standing, shirtless and barefoot. Curiously, the property was used 5 years ago to shoot a film about Hemingway's life. The movie was called Papa, and it was the first Hollywood film shot in Cuba in over 40 years. This property is a museum since the 1960s, and it's the best place in the country to get in touch with Papa. The house museum is preserved exactly as it was when he left for the last time in 1959, when he was already in the mental state which would take him to suicide. After World War II, Hemingway spent a lot of time in Havana. He began his periods of depression, particularly after several personal issues. In Finca Mejia, he began writing 2 novels. The Garden of Eden, which would be published after his death, and the Sea Book, one he did not finish, but was the base of his classic, The Old Man and the Sea.
Un hombre que cumple unos extraordinarios. El Señor lo acoge, lo escucha y al final le revela que el Hijo del Hombre debe ser ensalzado para que todos los que creen en Él tengan vida eterna.
Dio infatti ha tanto
Y agrega, Dios amó tanto al mundo que entregó a su Hijo único para que todo el que cree en Él no muera,
vada perduto,
sino que tenga vida eterna.
Nicodemo, che forse al momento
Nicodemo, que quizás en ese momento no comprende plenamente el sentido de estas palabras, podrá de seguro hacerlo.
On in his domain that makes him more angry than the thunder. My voice is piercing.
Dopo visto abbiamo una seconda lunga che ci viene inviata niente di meno che dalla Cina. Signore e signori, la dimensione del show di WRMI Radio Miami International 的意大利节目，正在播出的是 Andy Mangiarotti。要联系意大利编辑部，请访问一下网站 voiceofitaly.it andreamangiarotti.com 或 WRMI.net， 请享受 I Love Italy 意大利之声。这是一个在世界各地讲述意大利语的节目。E dal Canada, come vi ho preannunciato in precedenza, ci spostiamo dalla Cina, seconda negli oggi, dallo Jiangsu. Cara Radio Miami, amo l'Italia, ho ricevuto il vostro segnale alle ore 01:15 UTC sulla frequenza dei 5850 kHz, l'effetto d'ascolto molto chiaro, una radio Texun con un'antenna esterna. Mi piace molto il vostro programma e spero di continuare a lungo ad ascoltarlo. Vorrei una QSL cartacea, se possibile anche un souvenir del logo della radio. Il nostro amico è Ding Lung dallo Jiangxi, provincia dello Jiangxi. Ding Lung spesso e volentieri c'è scritto un po' a tutte le trasmissioni di Radio Miami International, un attimo ascoltatore che ci manda sempre dei rapporti d'ascolto molto dettagliati. Ha inviato appunto anche un audio.
It's the force. The kingdom of Satan has always been a kingdom. Laws that are passed to force people, like during the Middle Ages. And friends, we live in a country, in fact, the United States was the first country on this planet in the history of the world that separated church and state. This country was populated in the very early years by people that were fleeing religious persecution from Europe, especially. Every single country of Europe, every head of state, there was a monarchy, all ruled by kings and queens, and there was a state church. And that church was funded by taxes from that state.
다음은 이탈리아어로 된 당신의 텍스트의 번역입니다. 다음은 당신의 스페인어 텍스트의 번역입니다. 친애하는 청취자 여러분, 여러분은 이탈리아어로 된 WRMI 라디오 마이애미 인터내셔널의 프로그램을 듣고 계십니다.
All you have to remember is the movie Crocodile.
Well, possibly better known for our country's
These are the big generals.
and my friend Lee coming on strong, Bill Group, maybe you look.
Del Santo Padre y de los fieles congregados en la plaza de San Pedro al recordar el que hoy cumple 70 años.
Tante grazie a tutti.
Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Grazie, buona domenica.
Gracias, feliz domingo.
En este 9 compartimos la alegría de tantos peregrinos.
God is just a prayer away. Radio broadcast brought to you by Ed Wilson. BOUSMAN. Post Office Box 511. Lynchburg, Ohio. 45142, USA. Listen to my address again after this free offer. If you write this week, we will send you
free of charge, a book of gospel Bible lessons. In addition to this, ask if you want to enroll in our free Bible study course. These free offers Radio QSL card, send your reception report to Radio Pop Shop at gmail.com. That's Radio Pop Shop at gmail.com. Pop Shop Radio is produced in the town of Philippines, Supernatural, British Columbia in Canada, and is under the Linoleum production. WRMI is a commercial shortwave radio station that sells airtime to a wide variety of organizations. Views expressed on these programs are not those of WRMI. We welcome your reception reports and other correspondence at info@wrmi.net. This is WRMI, Radio Miami International, Okeechobee, Florida, USA. Hello and welcome to Encore.
Last chance radio to you on multi-channel USA.
Social media, las redes sociales, social networks. We're on Facebook. You can like us on Facebook. Give us a big thumbs up. We have a channel on Telegram too, and you can also send us a message on what used to be called Twitter. You can tweet us on X. All of that and more on our webpage. You can listen to us streaming audio live on the web. Coming up next, we've got music.
If I would keep the commandments, Yahweh would say the commandments.
Next, we have the weekly news stories, making the news, making the headlines here in Cuba. This week in Cuba.
Alfonso Dance Cuba Company has announced its debut performance in Thailand, following an invitation to the 27th Bangkok International Dance and Music Festival. This event is recognized as the largest and most prestigious annual festival in the Asian nation. On the 16th of this month, the company will showcase Cuba Vibra at the Thailand Cultural Center. From September 6 to October 15, the festival will showcase the talents of numerous artists and ensembles from various nations, encompassing music, dance, circus, and opera. The Cuban company stated that its performance at the event highlights the rhythms that have shaped the island's musical landscape from the 1950s to the present day, while also incorporating foreign influences. The choreographers blend cha-cha-cha, mambo, rumba, salsa, bolero, and conga in perfect harmony with Latin jazz, swing, rock and roll, and flamenco.
Checo, que grabó en su segundo trabajo, que se tituló Benny Gasto. Más tarde abrió los conciertos de rapero Pitbull y Pat East Movement en Praga. 2 años después, The Piosa rodó uno de sus videos más logrados bajo el título Bombas, con el que puntuó en varias listas de éxitos y gracias a que fue nominado para el premio Ruiz Señor Chico en la categoría Mejor Video del Año. Su tercer álbum de la generación lanzó Cristóbal en 2014 bajo el nombre Made in Checoslovaquia, en el que vuelve a combinar canciones en inglés y en checo. En 2018 volvió al concurso Super Estrella, esta vez como miembro jurado. Cristóbal es capaz de dar
That is the trumpet that in Psalm 81, when it says blow up the trumpet. So,
When I read things, I read passages.
Ukrayna'da oluşan hatırlaştırışmasını birleştirirse Rusya'da tutulan devletlerde ikinci dereceli ceza yürütülmüş bilen tertipler Amerika'da Hindistan'ın Rusya'nın üstüne efortunu da olmuşluğunu kıyaslayıp bu devletle maslahatlarla 25% koşulca samuzun küçük olganaklı oluşturmakta. Yeni yetme devletleri ve Avrupa İttifakı Rusya bile baban sorduğuna sıkılmışken ve Rusya'nın istiva bahar çekimi gittiğini bunun karşı Rusya, Xitay ve Hindistan katarlık devletlerine nefsiz çıkıp beklenmedi. Bunu kitleyen olmakçılar. Rusya, Katar'da tanıdan uzunluğun Amerika-İsrail'e münasebetini tertip etmediğini istiyor. Amerika Taşkı İşler Ministri Marco Rubio uzunluğun Gazze Uruş Topçu Sözlük'e kandak tertip etmediğini sonuçlar sözlük etmediğini istiyor. Amerika Taşkı İşler Ministri Marco Rubio, İsrail'in Katar'da Hamas ezalarının inşallah ucumunun televizyon Washington Office münasebetlerde İsrail'de kızdırış peyda kılmayacağını istiyor. Rubio düşenlikine. Angliya ve İsrail'e yolgu çıkışlı burun muhbirlerine enetçe biz bunun memnun olmuyoruz. Prezident mi memnun olmuyor değil.
たいなこと聞いたんですよ。そしたらその時に、じゃあ純ちゃん、この2つだけ守ってねっていうのね、一つは必ずセリフを覚えていくこと、それともう一つは遅刻をしないこと。あ、わかりましたってその時は思ったのよ。でもポッと考えたら、あれこれ当たり前ですよ。思ってたけど、大変なことだよなって誰でもそう思うよ。ね、ところが、時をが過ぎてね、よってポッと、あ、これが森さんが言ったことかっていうのはね、やっぱりセリフを覚えていくとすごい自分に余裕ができるっていうのかな。確かにそうですね。ちょっと中尾さんもご存知だと思うけど、いろんな先輩たちで、やっぱりドラマやね、芝居やってる時にセリフが飛んじゃったり他行っちゃう時あるじゃない。その時相手のセリフまで覚えてると元に戻せるっていうのかな、そういうこともあるわけですよ。
今できるそんなことあなた。今できる
嫌なこと言わない。今大変だよ。そうなんですよ。今僕ちょうどですね、舞台やってまして、この舞台をやってる時にもセリフ覚えるの大変だから、それはやめた方がいいね。そういや、そういうのは僕は、これは言ってなかった。なんてこと言われて、でも本当に、野々村さんもセリフ覚えるのこれ大変でしょ。大変です。どうやってんの？今聞いてた。僕がジョンさんに聞いてたんですよ。それどうやったのって。とにかくね、やる。
こなすしかないよね。
そう、もう何十回、何百回、わーって座りながら、覚えていくわけね。ただ、ある程度、形が頭の中に入ったなと思った時に、今度、立ってやる。横行ったり、前行ったり、後ろ行って、何回もやる。橋田壽学先生の、作品って、結構長いんですよ。難しいですね。15ページとか20ページ、大体1ページが1分ぐらいですから、15ページだったら15分じゃないですか。もうそういうことがあって、それを覚えなくちゃいけない。どうするって言ったらもう、やるってないわけじゃない。それでもう自分の回だったらもう、とてもプレッシャーになるけど、他の方がね、例えば中尾さんとかね、野々村さんがやってる時にね、心の中でエールを送ったわけですよ。
Hürmetli radio anlıqçılar, Taliban mahbus almashtirish yig'inida Amerika bilan munosabatni o'rnatishni muzokara qildi. Taliban bayonotida suhbatning ikki taraflik munosabat va Afg'onistondagi mehnat fursatlarini taraqqiy qildirishni o'z ichiga olganligini aytdi. Taliban Trump hukumati amaldorlari bilan o'tkazgan va asosan mahbus almashtirishga markazlashgan yig'inda Afg'oniston bilan Amerika o'rtasidagi munosabatni normallashtirishni muzokara qilganligini aytdi. Talibanning bayonotida Afg'oniston vaqtli hukumatining tashqi ishlar ministri vakili Amirxon Muttaqiyning Trumpdan asir almashtirish alayida vakili Adam Bohler va Afg'oniston alayida vakili Zalmal Xarizat bilan ko'rishganligini bildirdi. Taliban suhbatning suratlarini e'lon qildi. Bayonotda ikki davlat o'rtasidagi ikki taraflik munosabatni taraqqiy qildirish yo'llari, fuqarolarga munosabatlik masala va Afg'onistondagi mablag' fursati haqida atrofli suhbat o'tkazildi. Yig'inning qayerda va qachon o'tkazilganligi ko'rsatilmadi. Bayonotda yana Amerika yilning o'tgan oydan oxirida Afg'onistonning sharqiga yuborgan bayram qilib yer tavrash uchun ta'ziya bildirganligini qayd qildi. Hurmatli radio anlıqçılar, Berlinda vaziyatga
for any Spanish officers. He was called back. His merits in Cuba were such that Cuban authorities wrote the Queen asking her to authorize Alvear to stay in the island as he was considered essential for the development of Her Majesty's colony. And that was how, fortunately, Francisco de Alvear was able to remain in Cuba. Although he was involved in hundreds of projects throughout his life, the one he will always be remembered for, the one he worked on for the last 30 years of his life, was the construction of Havana's aqueduct, which is still working and carries his name. Until Alvear's project, Havana lacked of an aqueduct that could supply large areas of the city with water, and some of the liquids that was being used was not as clean as it should. The aqueduct was his completely. He designed it, he promoted it in Spain, and he supervised the construction up until his death. The project was huge. Dozens of kilometers of pipes had to be installed and connected to the existing ones, and the waters from Bento's channel had to be deviated. The problems were many. The irregularity of the grounds was a constant challenge, and the funds were scant. Also, Cuban wars for independence, which started in 1868, delayed the work. The first stage was completed in 1878, and the final one in 1893, following Alvear's plans as he passed away 6 years before that. He did not live to see his project finished, but his legacy lived on. Still today, the aqueduct is called Alvear's Aqueduct. Francisco de Alvear was also a part of many important international scientific and social organizations, and in Cuba, he got to be the vice president of the Medical, Physical, and Natural Sciences Academy of Havana. He received many awards and recognitions in his life, including the gold medal in 1878 Paris Universal Exposition for his aqueduct. So this was Havana Portraits, where you can always learn a little bit more about the Cuban capital. I hope you come back. I'm Daniel Montero. Take care.
Return to Radio Havana, Cuba, coming to you on our shortwave radio frequencies and also heard around the world on our internet connection on our webpage, www.radiohc.cu. Cuba Today is up next. It's that very weekly, very popular weekly program with Richard Richard. It's Cuba Today.
Of course. Good evening, Ed, and good evening also to you folks who are listening to Radio Havana, Cuba, especially on this your weekly program, Cuba Today. Begin explaining that the first declaration of Havana is a pivotal document in the history of the Cuban Revolution and the Cold War in the Americas. It represents a defiant response to external pressure and the clear articulation of Cuba's new revolutionary path. The first declaration of Havana was a mass rally and speech delivered by the historical leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, on September 2, 1960, from the Plaza de la Revolución José Marroquí in Havana. It was not just a speech, but a performative act of national sovereignty. Before hundreds
Iraq to the clueless and unsuspecting
American public who were still cheering Israeli puppet George W. Bush's leadership after 9/11. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up.
No, you can't. I know Chertoff had an ownership stake with the company that had all the X-ray machines, and that's another thing, Pat. So we had the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, so now we got to take off our shoes. Now we have to go through X-ray machines, and people don't even bat an eye today, Pat. When they go to the airport, they stand there like little sheeple, and I'm one of them, because I know if I don't do this, I'm not getting on the plane to go see my grandkids. And I don't feel like driving 17 hours. But we all get X-rayed now to go in, and if one little thing sets off this X-ray machine, you get patted down. And we accept this. That's another, the Fourth Amendment, the illegal search and seizure. But we willingly did this because of this false flag event. We succumbed to the powers that are over us, that used to work for us, but now we work for them. That's what all of this has devolved into.
Yeah. The whole thing is filled with lies, and anyone that just takes a look at any of this stuff would realize that, and if they would look into some of these things, like the shoe bomber, Richard Reed, he was refused entry to the plane. He didn't have a proper ID. He didn't have anything that you needed to board a plane. And all of a sudden, a couple guys in suits came out and basically ordered the airline to allow him on the plane. They weren't going to allow him on the plane. That's your shoe bomber. So this whole thing, the shoe bombing, the underwear bomber, those were all false flag events, just like 9/11. And I also point out in this article about the Levant affair. Most people aren't aware of the Levant affair. The Levant affair happened back 70 years ago. Israel was in these terror groups like the Irgun and Haganah. These guys, Menachem Begin, the future prime minister at the time, was a member of the Irgun. And what these guys did is they went around blowing up buildings and blowing up train stations and killing civilians, trying to get the Americans and the British to go along with their plans for Israel. People don't understand how Israel was originally set up. So just literally everything about this operation is a lie. And if you look at, Silverstein that bought the building, he bought this building just like 6 weeks before 9/11. And before the Bush family had security, like I said, a former Mossad agents company ran the security. They had the largest elevator job in the world. Complete renovation of the elevators at the Twin Towers that took months and months. And that is probably when the perpetrators put these explosives in the inner core. You've got to see how the Twin Towers were set up. And that's another thing that I talk about in here is that what we saw is airplanes, aluminum airplanes, flying through the walls at the Twin Towers. And what people don't understand is that these walls were built with 14-inch steel girders, thick steel. Every 40 inches, there was a 40 or 14-inch steel girder. No aluminum plane is going to go through 14-inch thick steel girders. And behind the steel girders, to make a kind of a tic-tac-toe looking grid, they put thick steel plates that were bolted and welded to the 14-inch steel girders. I'm just here to tell you that if an airplane, an aluminum airplane of any size going 500 miles an hour would hit that wall, fold up like an accordion, and the wings and the 50-foot tall tail section, those planes had a 5-story tail section. They would have broken right off and fallen crumpled to the ground, just like the plane would have crumpled up and whatever was left of it would have fallen to the ground, along with all the engine and the plane parts and all that. And even the hole in the side of the building that they showed with smoke coming out of it, you see no plane parts, and the holes are only about half as long as the wingspan of a 757. So did those wings, that extra 60 foot of wing, did that collapse and
今日ね、こうやってとか、それとか、首でを巻いてることによって寒さをしのぐっていうのかな。いや、昔は風邪って言ったら根に巻くって言ってたでしょ。いや、でもそれと同じで、やっぱりこれをやった僕暑い時でもやっぱり毎日やって寝てますよ。寝る時いやいや。普段でもいいから騙されたと思ってやっていただけると風邪防止になるんじゃないかな。ジェイさん風邪なんてひかないんですよね。ひかない。ということでですね、リスナーの皆さんの長生きの都合のメッセージも届いておりまして、東京都の尾根道歩くさん50代の方です。はい。私が元気で長生きのために取り組んでいることは体と脳のトレーニング。脳トレは俳句短歌の作成、休日の地元散歩の中で作ることもあります。体は休日の山登りと地元の市民スポーツセンターでマシンとストレッチで汗を流すこと、山登りは地図読みで脳トレも兼ねて、そしてあと食事はお魚を積極的に食べることですと。
50代です。
50代です。
若いわね。
若いですね。
続けなきゃダメよ。継続は力だから、
本当にお二人の話聞いててもちゃんと続けてることちゃんとありますからね。中尾さん今ねはい
毎日できることをただ続ければいいの。
無理をしないことです。できる範疇で頑張ればいい。続かないですよね。ということでですね、いろんな健康法がありますが、ここで健康のために毎朝元気に体を動かしているという街の声を聞いてみましょう。
お掃除をされてたんですけれども、毎朝ここでされてるの？
もうやっぱり毎朝日課になってるからいいんじゃないでしょうかね。掃除と電話体操がもう5時ちょっと過ぎぐらいからもう掃除やってますからね。私は全然若いです。私77。よっぽどですよ。全然。
私は73。
大体毎朝大体70名ぐらい来るんですよ。70名のうちの大体8割ぐらいが大体7、80ですね。
86歳になります。まず継続するということ、それからお友達がたくさんいらっしゃるので、体の体操だけじゃなくて、お口の体操、頭の体操、一緒にやってます。風邪ひいたことありません。25年かな。
Agahlandırışlarga qaramay, etnik tedbirlarni almagan tashkilotlardan ayni vaqtda tashkilotlarni o'stirib, undagi inson siyosiy hayotiga ta'sir. 70 yıl çıkıyor, 14 yıl davamlaşkan saltanat devrinden Fransa padişahı 14. yüzyıldaki başta en uzun olduğu hükümdar ve de tarih sayıklarının sırrınalan ayın padişahı çıkıyor. Zaten hükümet 23. yılı 8. sentada anıldığını istiyor. 1953. yılı Büyük Britanya'dan Kanada, Avustralya ve Yeni Zelanda kadarlı komşu devletinin hükümdarı olan ayın padişahı Çünkü Rızabi'nin oğlu Zeynep Şehzadesi Charlie. As the story unfolds. Now, here's what religious groups like. Religious groups like to control.
Der Mezzosopran ist denn enthüllt. Im Nationalmuseum führt dann eine Ausstellung durch das Leben und die lange Karriere der Operndiva und Schauspielerin. Sonja Cervena konnte auf eine lange Karriere zurückblicken, wie sie erst kurz vor ihrem Tod im Alter von 97 Jahren beendete. Mehr als 5500 Mal stand sie vor dem Publikum bei Konzerten und Aufführungen in Oper, Schauspiel, Operette und Musical, aber auch bei Publikumsgesprächen. Nach ersten Erfolgen in der Tschechoslowakei ging sie 1958 in die DDR und bekam ein Engagement an der Berliner Staatsoper. 1962 floh sie in den Westen und sang an der Deutschen Oper Berlin, der Oper Frankfurt und an weiteren Bühnen in Deutschland und der Welt. Sie spielte Cherubino in Mozarts Nozze di Figaro, übernahm die Rolle der Carmen in der gleichnamigen Oper Schauspiel, stand aber auch als Ulrika in
Here we have not that they went out on, but we do have that they went out on the 15th day of the month. It teaches us that the 15th.
Zeitungen, darunter zweimal die
Most of the time, the full moon land. It can land.
I can get past your carnal mind, your evil mind, or whatever. Gives another Bible study. And then finally, for this kind of a question, they came to Jesus one day, and they said, the Bible said well, I guess I'm actually going on. I'm actually on, so let me get straight number here. I hear the top, of course, that's a good comment, but let me put the last one too. I hear a nice piece of all right, I think we got it ready to go at this time. Yeah. Lord, in the name of Jesus, here it is. One day I walked along in sin and shame. Then one night on my knees, he called my name.
German. Programs in languages such as Arabic, Italian and Hebrew were recorded elsewhere and sent to Quito on large acetate-coated transcription discs. In 1951, HCJB acquired 45 acres of land near the town of Pifo, 20 miles east of Quito, where they constructed transmission and antenna facilities that enabled considerable expansion over the following decades. Initially, 8 close-in antennas and 2 dipoles were erected, and all broadcast activities were moved to the Pifo site in 1953, with 2 studio-to-transmitter links operating on FM. Broadcasts in German were expanded, not targeting Europe, but rather the many post-war German-speaking communities in South America. HCJB's first high-power shortwave transmitter, a 50-kilowatt unit, was again designed and built in-house in 1956. Here's a recording of HCJB from 1957.
The Back to the Bible broadcast is mixed up by the facilities of your pioneer missionary broadcaster, radio station HCJB, heralding Christ Jesus' blessings from Quito, the capital city of Ecuador in South America. You are listening to a 3-hour release in English known as Ecuadorian Echoes. Immediately following the time signal, we present the staff feature, The Call of the Andes.
Then in 1961, HCJB launched a TV station for Quito, the first licensed TV station in Ecuador. And in 1965, HCJB's own hydroelectric plant at Papalacta began generating sufficient electricity to power all the broadcasts from Pifo. Pre-recorded Voice of the Andes radio programs in Central European languages began to be aired, and more live programming in Portuguese and Japanese was added in 1967. Also in 1967, 3 100-kilowatt RCA transmitters were acquired from Vatican Radio, and these were placed into service progressively between 1968 and 1970. HCJB was then receiving hundreds of letters each week with reception reports from shortwave DXers around the world. The correspondence department of HCJB responded to its listeners with QSL cards and Christian tracts. One fondly remembered program was DX Party Line, which was hosted from its inception by HCJB missionary Clayton Howard and his wife Helen. The program was heard for more than 40 years, twice a week, and included the reading of letters from shortwave listeners around the world, as well as reception reports sent to the station. DX Party Line also included shortwave radio listening tips, information on antennas, and equipment reviews. In 1974, Clayton Howard suggested a shortwave listeners club be created, and so Andes DXers International, or ANDEX, began. Members would receive a membership certificate and membership card with the member's name and individual member number, along with Howard's signature. A monthly bulletin was sent to members, of which I was one. In fact, I was one of HCJB's monitors in the UK, sending them many dozens of reception reports over the years, and I still have an HCJB pennant hanging in my studio. And X eventually had a membership in the thousands and continued as a service of HCJB until 1996. Besides DX Party Line, other original radio programming produced by HCJB staff members included Morning in the Mountains, Musica del Ecuador, Musical Mailbag, Happiness Is, and Passport.
You're listening to Passport. From Quito, Ecuador. For good shortwave listening, click tune to HCJB, Quito, Ecuador, and Passport. Thank you, Ben Cummings, and welcome back, International Viewer. It's great to gab across the miles like this, not only giving out from here, but hearing from you as well. This is your pal Forrest. People's mouths and letters coming in, friend. They're great help and encouragement. Our address at this spot under the sun is a great big post office box numbered 691 at Quito, Ecuador. We hope you'll want to keep it warm with your letters, too. That address again, box 691, Quito, Ecuador, South America.
In the mid-1970s, HCJB constructed a secondary transmitter site halfway up Mount Pichincha, the volcano in whose foothills Quito is built. There they installed a 50-kilowatt medium-wave transmitter operating on 690 kilohertz. On Sunday nights, they often ran DX tests, such as this one.
Esta es una transmisión de prueba de HCJB, la voz de los Andes en Quito, Ecuador. En varios países hay radioescuchas que están tratando de captarnos en esta frecuencia de onda media de 690 kHz.
In 1979, a steerable egg beater antenna was constructed, and in 1981, a 500 kilowatt transmitter, designed by HCJB's own engineers, was built at the facilities of Crown International in Elkhart, Indiana. This transmitter was put into use from PIFO to try to overcome some of the Russian jamming efforts their broadcasts to Soviet bloc countries were facing. In 1986, they acquired the Crown International facility at Elkhart, now called Sunset Solutions, and used it to modify a 500 kilowatt Siemens single sideband transmitter to operate on SSB with a carrier, so it could be heard on AM radios. And then in the 1990s, HCJB engineers built a number of new 100 kilowatt transmitters using the HC100 design, which also used operation on SSB with a carrier. These transmitters were the Ministry's contribution to the World by 2000 challenge, and they were a successful design that was deployed not only in PIFO, but also at TWR in Swaziland, and later at Reach Beyond in Australia. Here's an ID from June 1994.
The Voice of the Andes, HCJB, from Quito, Ecuador, is broadcasting in the English language through the 31 and 25 meter band frequencies from 9745 and 11925 kilohertz. The time in Quito is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with everything on 0300 UTC. With news from Latin America and the world, I'm Ralph Kurtenbach.
Over the years, more land was bought adjoining the PIFO site, such that it eventually covered more than 200 acres. By 1995, there were 13 transmitters and 32 antennas on the PIFO site, beaming to all corners of the globe. The main studio compound was in downtown Quito, from where programming was fed to the transmitter site via a microwave link, which replaced the earlier FM links. A staff of over 100 people were employed in the radio ministry, and nearly double that were involved in the operation of HCJB's medical clinics throughout the country. The eventual close down of HCJB from Quito came not because of falling listenership or loss of commitment to shortwave broadcasting, but rather because of the decision of the Ecuadorian government to demand the removal of HCJB's shortwave antenna masts, which they determined would be too close to the new Quito airport, then under construction. Consideration was given to building a new shortwave station near Guayaquil, but in the end, the mission leadership in the USA decided instead to move their base of operations from Ecuador to Australia. The station at Pifo near Quito was gradually shut down and dismantled in the mid-2000s, and their final broadcast in English was on Saturday, May 6, 2006. And on Sunday, September the 30th, 2009, after nearly 80 years of international shortwave broadcasting from Ecuador, radio station HCJB made its last high-power transmission. The 50-kilowatt medium-wave transmitter on 690 kHz was shut down in 2017, but the station does continue to this day from the Mount Pichincha site with Spanish and Quechua on 6050 kHz using a 1-kilowatt transmitter and a double dipole antenna designed to reach the remote rural areas of Ecuador. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Ray. Next week, Ray will be visiting the Caribbean for the story of Trans World Radio's station on the Dutch island of Bonaire. Today, I'm just getting back from the B25 High Frequency Coordination Conference in Prague in the Czech Republic. We're going to have many reports from that conference on upcoming editions of Wavescan beginning next week. But this week, we have to catch up on a lot of worldwide DX news from our Wavescan correspondents, beginning with Andre Hoos in South Africa.
First, some radio news from Africa. A teenage DXer in Colorado in the US, Liam, informed me that satellite imagery from April 2025 confirmed that the antennas at the former VOA Sao Tome shortwave site have been completely removed. That means there is no prospect of the site returning to transmission capability. VOA stopped all transmissions from Sao Tome exactly a year ago, in August 2024. The medium-wave transmission on 1530 kHz and shortwave transmissions on 6180, 12070 and 15460 kHz from Sao Tome used to be heard all over Africa. I heard Radio Congo from Brazzaville on 8th July on 6115 kHz. This used to be a regular catch here in Johannesburg, South Africa, but the signal went quiet about a year or so ago. It has suddenly reappeared. In the days after 8 July, listeners in Europe also reported hearing Radio Congo with French and local language programming. Then the signal went quiet again for some weeks. It was heard again on 1st of August in Spain and France, among other places. This signal appears to be quite sporadic, but it might be worth monitoring this frequency regularly, particularly around 1800 to 1900 UTC, the time when it seems to broadcast. That is 6115 kHz. My shortwave reception report for August follows. All signals were received in Johannesburg in a suburban area. On 5 August, Radio Taiwan International in Russian from Sofia on 9790 kHz at 1724 UTC. A female voice talking. Israel 454. KBS World Radio in Spanish on 9740 kHz at 1726 UTC. This came from Kim Jai. Korean music. Israel 555. Vatican Radio in Belarusian on 9710 kHz from Santa Maria di Galleria at 1727 UTC. Female voice talking. Israel 353. Radio Mali from Bamako on 9635 kHz at 1729 UTC. African music play. Israel 353. BBC in Korean from Dushanbe on 9390 kHz
at 17:31 UTC. Female voice talking and music in the background. SIO 353. On 8 August, reach beyond Australia from Kununurra on 15640 kHz at 12:36 UTC. Program in Gujarati with female voice talking. SIO 544. Akashvani in Swahili from Bengaluru on 15410 kHz at 12:38 UTC. Indian music playing. SIO 555. CRI in Korean from Zhanyang on 15260 kHz at 12:40 UTC. Chinese music playing. SIO 353. NEBC Manila from Bukawi in Khmer on 13870 kHz at 12:56 UTC. Male voice talking and music in the background. SIO 454. FEBC Manila from Bukawi in the language Hakka, which is spoken in Yunnan in China, on 12120 kHz at 12:58 UTC. Music. SIO 454. Reach beyond Australia from Kununurra on 11900 kHz at 1312 UTC. Hindi program with female voice talking. SIO 353. AWR in Chinese from Guam on 11850 kHz. Male voice talking and music. This was at 1314 UTC.